Hello everyone, welcome to this UIUX crash course with Anybody Can Develop and me, your tutor for today, Jacqueline Asaridate. So a bit about me. I am Jacqueline Asaridate, as I mentioned earlier. I'm a lead user interface designer at Ghana Tech Lab and user experience designer at Texel Limited Ghana. I completed my bachelor's in computer engineering. I love to learn and also teach what I learn. Yeah, so on Behance, you can find me using the names below here. So today what we'll be doing is we'll be introducing you to UIUX, and then we'll explain the difference between UI and UX design, and then there will be some examples. You'll be introduced to design fundamentals, and then you'll be introduced to prototyping, wireframing basics, and finally high fidelity mockup basics, practicals in Wizard. We are going to design that. Okay, so UI UX. What is UI? UI is basically user interface. And what is user interface? The medium used by the individual or the user to interact with a product or service. So user interface is basically what the user interacts with to get a specific job done or a type of job done. Right, so and what is UX? UX, which is simply user experience, is how the user feels when interacting with a product. How does the user feel when interacting with the product? Experiences for products can either be good or be bad. For your users to have a good experience, the design should be equitable, usable, enjoyable, and useful. Now, when we say equitable, what do we mean? We mean that the design should be able to be used by a wide range of people. A variety of people should be able to use it. It shouldn't be only limited to a specific type of people. Disabled people should be able to use. Abled people should be able to use. People from different diverse backgrounds should be able to use as well. What do we mean by usable? Usable shouldn't be too complicated for the users to understand. They should be able to see and immediately know how to use, or be able to see and be able to learn how to use it. If it's too complicated and not usable, it delivers bad experiences to your users. Now, enjoyable. What keeps your users coming back is when your experience is enjoyable. If they don't enjoy the experience on the first time or the first try, they are not going to come back again. So you have to make sure that your experiences are enjoyable. An example is social media. As social medias that we know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. People keep visiting or keep going back to these apps because they are enjoyable to them. They enjoy the experience. They enjoy everything there. And finally, useful. Now, when we say useful, we want to say, we mean the experience should do what it says it will do. It should be able to perform its intended activity. So if I say I'm designing a messaging app and the app I present to my users is not able to send messages, then my design is not useful. It becomes useless to my users. Okay, so what are the differences between UI design and UX design? UI design involves using colors, shapes, and other design principles to create a visual product or visually pleasing product. And UX design basically involves the creation of a product that provides meaningful and relevant experiences to its users. So UI basically involves the interface, how it looks, the colors, the typography, and all that. And UX encompasses everything there. It goes from the beginning to the end, the experience that is being created for the user. That is what UX design is. Now, that's some examples of UX and UI design. What we see here is an example of a user interface, right? We see the colors, we see the typography, we see the size of the text and the buttons, and a whole lot more. UX here in this case involves where the content have been placed. So the structuring of everything here. There's a reason why login was not a button and get started was made a button. There's a user experience that was considered, and there's a reason why the logo is up there and not down there. There's a user experience being considered here. Do you get it? Okay, so moving on. Introduction to design fundamentals. Yes. So there are a number of design fundamentals out there. There are lots of design fundamentals out there, but for this course we are going to focus on color and contrast, white space, visual hierarchy, complexity and simplicity, consistency, and finally scale. So color and contrast. Contrast is the difference in luminance between two adjacent or overlaid colors, right? If you look at my examples here below, you realize that the first one doesn't have a very good contrast here. The design on my left, you see last updated can hardly be seen because the contrast between that and the background is quite poor. But when you focus and look at the design on the right here, you see that last updated is quite visible now because the background color was changed to a color that contrasts well with the text. Okay, so white space. What is white space? This is the white space, the empty space between design element and your user interface. If you look here on the left, you see that there's lack of white space here, so the design looks a bit clumsy, or it looks clumsy basically, let me put it like that. But if you look at the design on your right, you realize that there's enough white space to make the design look breathable and beautiful and pleasing to the eye. Okay, so visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is a principle of arranging design elements to show their order of importance. So it basically lets us know what element is important, what elements the user should focus on, or what element the user should see first, right? It's visual hierarchy directs the user's action in a way. So when you look at the design on your left, you see last updated. You see the design on the left. Things are not really placed well. Everything looks the same. So it's hard to pick one particular thing to focus on. You don't know if you focus on the privacy grade E or Amazon, because nothing stands out here. Aside from the logo, nothing stands out. Everything looks the same. But when you look on the design on your right, you realize that things have been carefully positioned in a visual hierarchy form. So it makes it easy to notice certain or particular elements here. In my case, the first thing I notice when I look at this design is privacy grade E, because the color is different and it stands out. Then from then I see the logo, the Amazon logo, right? So it has been carefully positioned and placed to direct the user's attention. So that's basically what visual hierarchy does. Complexity and simplicity. Now, it is in the design world, we say that more is not always better, and simplicity is more. Do not overwhelm your user with too much details. When you look at the design on the left, you realize that it has too many things going on here, so it makes the thing look clumsy. Your 5 critical concerns found, you see shadow there that isn't supposed to be there. Privacy grade E, you see shadow, and then I don't know what the dollar sign is doing in the background. But when you look at the design on your right, you realize that everything is simple. Nothing is complicated. Everything is as it should be. Consistency. You have to make sure the elements in your design are consistent. Everything is applied consistently in your design. Everything is aligned as it should. Buttons are placed similarly as they should be. So when you look on my left, you realize the alignment here is not consistent. Things is like everything is all over the place. But when you look on my right, you realize that is as should be. The alignment is perfect, the spacing is good, and then the contrast is good. So scale. Now when we say scale, what do we mean? How big or how design? We basically mean how big or how small the design elements are in a design. Your things should be properly placed. It should have the right scale. Things shouldn't be too small that the user is unable to read or see, or too big that it takes up too much space. So when you look on my left, you realize that things are not going on there. But when you look on my right, everything is placed as should be. So now we go on to prototyping. What is prototype? What is a prototype? A prototype is a simulation of a real product that is used to get feedback and test. So it is an effective way to get feedback from investors and stakeholders. So prototype is like a representation of the actual product. It is not the actual product. Prototypes are made because it is a fast way to get feedback. It is a fast way to test with your users, to incorporate the feedbacks you get from them. So what are the types of prototypes? Now, we have two types, low fidelity and high fidelity. But then someone will ask, what does fidelity mean? Fidelity refers to the level of detail in a design. So when we say low fidelity, we are basically saying there's low level of detail in that design, and when we say high fidelity, we mean there's high level of detail in the design. So examples of low fidelity prototypes, types of low fidelity prototypes are paper prototypes and digital prototypes. An example of high fidelity prototypes are the digital prototypes that we design in these designing tools like Adobe XD, InVision, Figma, and the rest. So these are examples of prototypes. On my left here, you see the low fidelity prototype or the wireframe. On my right, you see the high fidelity prototype. Now, let's move on to wireframing. What's a wireframe? So from earlier, we mentioned that wireframe is a type of the low fidelity prototype. So it's a low fidelity layout. That means it doesn't have a lot of details. It just has the basic information needed to figure out how the app is going to look like. It deals with structure and functionality than visuals or how it's supposed to look. So its goal is to create a skeleton of the actual design before moving on to create the design itself. What are the types of wireframes? We have low fidelity wireframes like the prototypes. We have low fidelity wireframes and high fidelity wireframes. Yes, so as you can see here on my left, there's a low fidelity wireframe which has very limited detail, and then there's a high fidelity wireframe which has a bit more detail compared to the low fidelity wireframe. Okay, so that's it for the theory. Move on to the practical. So this is what we are going to be designing for the practical in Wizard. Join me as we design. Thank you very much.